All right, hello everyone. Welcome to my tongue doesn't work. Hello everyone. Welcome to Gaming. I'm Nick on the side of the comms, of course. Justin providing audio commentary on his own brand of madness wherever applicable. So it happened. We
Don't let
finally
yourself
got the
get
marathon
tongue
review.
twisted. Don't let yourself get overwhelmed. Marathon is here.
Yes, I know. And having marathon come and be revealed certainly is cause to be overwhelmed, though. So I have a whelmed reason, at least I think. But well, then again, is it a whelmed reason? I think I'm underwhelmed, but
It's
we'll
both
get to that.
underwhelmed and overwhelmed and disappointed at the same time.
We're overwhelmed in their underwhelmingness.
Yes.
But so yeah, marathon. I said I'd watch it. Justin watched it,
I watched it.
and here we are to talk about
Yep.
it. He says it with such. Yes, I watched it,
I watched it.
but
There were some points I liked. Most of it is we'll get into that.
yes, and let's just cut straight to the dark meat then. So, as far as we can tell, or at least our opinions of it, I'll start with mine.
Hmm.
Is that I, I'm not. I'm not impressed. I'll just call a spade a spade. I'm not impressed. I mean, it looks interesting. Don't get me wrong, but is it something that I'd be like, yeah, sure, I'll run out to the store and get it right now? Not really. Granted, in full defense, I'm not a big extraction shooter guy. I think the only one I've ever played was, dare I say it, Hawked, which I'm sure some people in the extraction community probably know and are immediately rolling their eyes, being like, "Oh God, he has shit taste." And yeah, probably you're right on that one. But it's kind of the only one I've really played that I would consider an extraction shooter. I mean, I've heard people call Helldivers an extraction shooter with both me and Justin play, but I don't think either of us would agree to that
It's
being an
not
extraction
exactly
shooter.
the best name for it now.
Yeah, no, I mean, you extract resources, but even then, they're completely optional. Whether you extract anything or not has nothing on the objective, so I don't know. It's definitely not an extraction shooter, at least I would think not. But
No.
anyways, as far as the actual thing itself goes, I mean, where to begin? Let's just start with my initial impressions when I first watched it. My eyes were overwhelmed. It was I no, hand on the traveler as I say this. My I physically was hurt watching this because of the mental dissonance. Because it just was so right. Like the word I've been seeing get thrown around is over-designed, and I cannot agree more. I mean, this kind of goes to a point me and Justin were talking about before the stream, where there are ways that you can do bright and vibrant, colorful worlds. Like a great example I brought up with Justin was Avatar, right?
Hmm.
Love the movies, hate the movies, love the game, hate the game. Not that I was gonna say something.
No.
Anyways,
No, I was just humming.
love the game. Okay. Love the game, love the movies, whatever. You can't deny Cameron knows how to make a colorful world that at least looks pretty to look at. And same thing goes with Ubisoft making the game. I played the game. I liked the game. That might be controversial. That might not. But it's a good game. Looks good at the very least. And my eyes didn't hurt when I looked at all the colors. In fact, they cried tears of joy because of how beautiful it was. When I looked at Marathon, I probably cried tears of pain because it, like I said, it just feels so off-putting. At least, don't get me wrong. Initially it was like that. It kind of mellowed out over time as my mind kind of adjusted to what I was looking at. But there's still that kind of in the back of my head that goes, there's something off about this, and it's not Uncanny Valley as far as the characters go, but we'll get to that. It's more of the fact that it looks so contrasted. Like you see these very bright, almost. I mean, both Justin and I were using the word Tron-like, but I honestly don't even know if that's correct. But almost like very sleek,
Tron, but
very
with much more colors.
right, right. Here's the one. Here's the best way to describe it. It's a very clean, sterile-looking thing against this kind of foresty, hyper-realistic, almost looking place, or at least attempted realism, or more natural-looking place. So it's kind of this big division between very clean, sterile-looking things versus this heavily, like not heavily, but natural-looking things. So your brain just goes, it does not look right. And that's kind of going back to what I said earlier about Avatar, right? Everything in that world, at least in my personal opinion, looks like it belongs in that world, you know? Even the human stuff that they have, it looks like it, it definitely has that kind of feeling of, it's lived in, it's military, yeah, it contrasts with the environment, but in almost kind of like yin to a yang way, where it's like, here's this kind of, here's this kind of industry, and then here's nature and everything else. It looks like they're contrasting, but in a way that's not ugly to look at. This, I struggle to use the word ugly, but it definitely didn't make me feel great looking at it, at least at first. My brain did adjust, but yeah. Good lord, I spent 5 minutes just ranting about colors.
But to be fair, the colors in like while you're watching the gameplay, the colors feel very invading in a way.
I mean, what's your personal take on it all? You mentioned invading, but
like it feels like it's just overly bright, overly colorful for no real reason. I went and said to Nick before this started, if the characters were the way that they are now, but the environment was much more dark, more gritty. The colors weren't as bright as they were, but like they're there, but much more darker and muted colors. It might be a little more appealing to me, but because everything screams at the exact same colorful volume, everything screams at for your attention, and because of that, it all does not look appealing in the slightest.
I can definitely vibe with that. And moving right along for the sake of time, let's just go on to the overall impressions I got. Let's just take a bit of a side detour into more narrative standpoint. I know, talk about the gameplay. We'll get there, and yes, I know it's already almost 7 minutes, but we'll get there, trust me. It definitely has almost like a psychological... they definitely have the potential, anyway, from what we can see from their trailers and stuff like that they could play with the kind of psychological horror aspect of it. I mean, one thing that keeps coming to mind when I was looking at it was System Shock. Like, that kind of horror-esque vibe. They could definitely play with that. Justin and I were talking about this again. Whether they actually do is a whole other, discussion. But they could. And that narratively could go somewhere at the very least. It's definitely, like I said, the kind of possibility to play with the more thriller horror aspects of, computers and sci-fi and stuff like that. Again, whether they go that route or not, we'll see. But it is interesting to kind of, think about the possibilities. Right, now we finally come to gameplay. Gameplay. And, honestly, I don't know. Not much more I can say as far as, grand raving appeal. It's definitely... Again, I go back to what I said about the colors. Does this make me want to go out and buy the game? Not really. I mean, I'd try it, maybe, but... I don't know if I'd play long-term, but like I said, I ain't an extraction shooter guy. One thing I have been heard said, and one thing I do very much agree with, is the idea that I don't know if this will appeal in the long term to the extraction shooter player base, due to the fact that it is almost too seamless to get into. Like, here, let's go with the godfather, let's say, of all extraction shooters at the moment. Escape from Tarkov. Tarkov, from what I've been told anyway, has a pretty high skill ceiling and doesn't really tell you anything about how to do anything. You figure it out as you go along. Yeah. You just kind of are like, here's a gun, do that thing, figure the rest out. There's really no direction as to how you go about doing things, but from what we've seen of Bungie's Marathon, it feels very frictionless, is the word I've heard people like Asmongold people and Lucky throw out. And I know bringing up his name is controversial in and of itself, but I do think that there is a point to be made in the fact that because of it being very seamless to get into and having not as possibly high as a skill ceiling, I mean, sure, they said, like, oh yeah, great player that has, good skill and game knowledge could always outwit a person with, higher kit. We'll actually see if that turns out to be true, right? Like, at the end of the day, how much skill difference will be able to be made against a higherly kitted opponent. Maybe there's a lot, maybe there's a little, but the point is the game feels very frictionless and perhaps not as high of a skill ceiling, or possible skill ceiling, as something like Tarkov. Which is, I think, from what I've been told anyway, what a lot of people from Tarkov, enjoy. It's the idea of, learning the game, learn how to do it, become really good at it to the point where it almost becomes, second nature. I know what this costs because I know what it sells for. I know what this does because I've used it before. I know the best movement to do, or I know the best places to go to find the best stuff, that kind of thing. Will there be that kind of a high skill ceiling there in Marathon that drags people back in long term? Don't get me wrong, I feel like this game will sell copies, but will it sell, or it will sell copies, it will move product. Bungie can never, if not fail, to move product, at least initially. Initially. Whether it actually is able to sustain in the long term, I don't think there's much faith, at least in my camp, as for that. Will I still end up trying it? I mean, maybe. Don't get me wrong, the game looks, at the very least, slightly interesting. Is it revolutionary? No. But again, not my jibe. But I'll at least try something once. But I think that's gonna be where a lot of people stop, right? They'll try it, appraise it, and move on. And speaking of the way of the game, let's move on to something else we were talking about before stream as well. Cosmetics. Justin himself kind of brought up this before stream as well, and perhaps I'll let you talk about the whole cosmetic angle. Kind of let you see.
So they're gonna be going and setting up microtransactions for the game for a variety of different things. The very same type of things that's in Destiny right now. Things like seasonal passes, extra specific content that you can only get through premium pay, stuff like that. But that's also going to obviously include specialized cosmetics that only, like, some people are going to have access to, or some people who are willing to pay for it have access to. So what's going to happen, likely, is they're going to be going and probably, I don't know what the best way to say this is like, they're probably going to be going and providing, like, extra opportunities for people to go and get nice, fancy, kitted out, like, characters.
There's gonna be a cash shop.
Yeah, well, there's gonna be a cash shop, yes, but like fancy looking characters to go and pretty out there, whatever they want to go for. But the thing is that's like very much like Destiny right now, where that's just look. But that's gonna be there. So
it does definitely raise the question of, like, will there be enough appeal for people to do that? And this kind of brings us to the question concerning actual character models. At least in my opinion, they don't look too appealing. They almost look plasticky, which some people say, because of the narrative of the game, is kind of the point. Regardless of whether the truth of that is there or not, the fact is it does, and it doesn't help them. And when you're selling skins, I mean, let's look at the godfather of all methods of skin selling, gacha games. Yeah, I had to bring it in somewhere. I gotta get the weeb out somewhere. But, when you look at characters like Mavuika in Genshin Impact, or, Herta in Star Rail, or any of those kinds of games, they look like fun characters, and people cosplay that. In fact, there's an entire comment section of how the heck you would even cosplay Mavuika because of her weird outfit, but I'm getting off topic. But, the point is that these characters look appealing to the point where you were like, I want to do that. I want to dress up as them. I want to, get kits to make this character look good. I mean, for God's sake, they don't really do skin selling anymore. That feels much darker to say than it should be. But, look at the game that kind of preceded both these games, Honkai Impact 3rd. Look at the just copious amounts of skins in that game. Yep. And it makes sense because these are characters that people resonated with, and they wanted to dress them up in sailor uniforms and dresses and and pick your poison. But the point is that people resonated with those characters to the point where it fueled the desire to kind of, play doll with them, play dress up with them. No shock if you do. I may. But, it's kind of that idea of, like, there's that connection there that people want to do that. Will that be there with these characters? I honestly don't know, but if I had to be, because I am a betting man, I wouldn't say so. Because they just, again, they don't look very compelling. Which kind of brings me to another point that this is a great way to segment into. Way back before Marathon was in its early development days, or while it was in its early development days, talk of around the town was that it was going to be a hero shooter. But then there was a major shakeup in leadership. The directors, I believe, changed, and then thereafter, at some point, I think shortly after, they announced that they were switching gears to an extraction shooter. And why this is relevant is because when you look at the Vidoc, or whatever they're calling the big reveal they did for Marathon, and they were kind of showing off the kind of 4 characters or archetypes or whatever the heck they're calling them that they have. Is it just me, or can you feel the hero shooter blood still in there?
Yeah.
Like, you can definitely feel that these characters were originally designed to be their own hero characters, that at some point someone was like, wait, we're not doing hero shooter anymore, make them into classes. But they just kind of were like, okay, we'll see what we can do. And this is what they came up with. So, I don't know. You can definitely see that the idea was there to make them heroes, but then because they change in genre, they kind of split both ways. Which would explain the possibility of the skin shop and how they were planning to do that. Which, speaking of, another thing I've been hearing a lot about this game, and that it's been talked about recently, is guess what a lot of people that I've been hearing compare it to? Or at least a decent majority. I'll give you one word. Concord.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's the last thing you want to be compared to in the multiplayer space, especially right now, because if you haven't been keeping track of the multiplayer shooter genre as the gaming industry is concerned, Concord's dead.
Yes.
Dead, buried, and possibly been cremated.
And completely
So,
out of anything, any life support it was given is gone.
yes. I can't remember, was it Activision or EA who made Concord?
It
Was it someone else?
was Activision, I'm pretty
Activision.
sure, I think. I don't know. I don't care. I really
That's one of the
didn't.
greedy bastards. And
But-
that's kind of a good way to segment, though.
But
if I may.
that's the thing, real quick, side note, is like when it comes to Sony's side of thing, a lot of people like well, specifically in the Sony side of things, are looking at Marathon the same way that they looked at it with Concord and with Helldivers. They're looking at Marathon the same way they did with those games. But surprise, surprise, like guess what? Helldivers is the only one still around here. So
Yeah.
yeah.
And that kind of is a good point, like I said, to kind of circle back, kind of what you said. That's the nail on the head right there. I don't care. That is the problem. Because everyone is going to look at this, and when they draw the line of Concord, they're going to think, don't care, moving on.
Yep.
You know, if you have that kind of connection already, and you haven't even, officially had any play tests happen beyond specific streamers and internal, then it's not a good sign for longevity as far as we're concerned. Because let's be honest, Helldivers came first, and then I believe Concord came out. Helldivers, they wanted to do the same thing they did with Concord, but they did with Helldivers. At least I think they did, because I think Concord was a Sony product. It might have been a Sony-only product Activision made. I don't remember. But, they wanted to basically repeat the success of something like Helldivers. But the problem is, Concord, if memory serves, the thing everyone said is that it was chasing trends.
Yeah.
It wasn't made for anyone in particular. It was just there to... it was basically made for a theoretical audience. People didn't see an audience of people clamoring for another hero shooter and said, we'll make it for them. They're like, we'll make a hero shooter and hope there's an audience there for them because we believe there is. And that kind of goes back to another point with Marathon, is a lot of people are saying, who wanted this? And I think this is kind of where that Concord reference is coming from to a degree as well. Concord was designed for a theoretical player base that most people didn't even believe existed. Or if it did, it wasn't resonating with them. And Marathon kind of hits the same chords to a certain degree. Most people look at this and say, who is this made for? Yeah. As we kind of touched on earlier in the show, it feels a bit too easy to get into for the Escape from Tarkov guys, or whatever the hero shooter people are on these, or hero shooter, whatever the extraction shooter people are on, whatever the heck is not around Tarkov. Way I hear it, Tarkov is the thing, and everything else has just been pale imitations. Nothing else has kind of filled the void. Is this an attempt at that? Okay. Problem is, by the looks of it, you don't really understand what made Tarkov good, at least in the eyes of the people who play it.
That's the biggest issue, is the fact that they're going and trying to get into a market of players that is very, very small. There are
Particular.
only so many people who enjoy extraction shooters because they're willing to go through the grind and the suffering required in order to enjoy said games. Like the majority of people who play that game tend to have experiences that involve them just outright losing, and whatever they had is gone. That's it. They have to start from scratch, or they just have to go and be like, all right, I'll go grab other stuff and try again. They're willing to go through that because they find it enjoyable for those rare moments where they do get out and they do get the things that they were looking for. But that's not everybody, though. That's the problem. And because of that, that's what makes it so niche. That's what makes it so small.
That's the thing, right? And from what I've heard, myself especially, I don't like games where you can make negative progress. Hell, take Hawk, take Sea of Thieves even, which isn't even an extraction shooter, or even a shooter at all, I guess. Blunderbuss Combat, maybe? I don't know. But, these are games where you can lose progress, sure, but once you've already cashed out, once you take that chest to the merchant or to the gold hoarder, whatever, and you cash out your money, that number goes up, you have that money. If you get sunk, that money you've claimed is no longer gone. Your reputation doesn't decrease.
Yeah, it's set up where no matter what, you still have everything that you've earned. You just have to earn it. You have to get it to the safe zone first, and that's the difference between like for example, Sea of Thieves is you could lose, but you're losing out on the stuff that you haven't gained yet.
Right.
Like
it's kind of that
you don't lose anything you've already gained.
Exactly, right? It's that idea of like not making, you can, at worst, you make no progress or some progress, but you can never make reverse progress,
yes.
Right? It's kind of that, as you said, it's kind of that race to see who claims it first. But once it's claimed, it's claimed. That's it. In games like Tarkov, until somebody even claims it, it's fair game. And hell, even after somebody claims it, it's still fair game. All you have to do is kill the person who has it and take it off their corpse.
Yep.
So, it's definitely a game that even in Bungie's thing, they allude to the idea of they want to make it more easy to get into for more people to play extraction shooters because they want more people to play it. But the problem is, they're kind of revealing in this moment that they don't understand why people play extraction shooters because they even said it themselves. They pretty much, I hate to say it this way, but they pretty much admitted, in all but officially, to not knowing what the hell makes extraction shooters good when they're saying that they want, more people to play extraction shooters, so they purposely designed it to be easier to get into, while simultaneously not knowing or not acknowledging or whatever that that's exactly why people play extraction shooters. They like that kind of heavy, hardcore feeling, at least as far as I can tell. And those attempts that have been done in the past to make it more accessible, well, as far as we can tell, none of them have really hit it off. So, again, I hate to say it, Bungie, what the hell makes you think you can? And, on the topic of that, let's go over to the other side of things. So it's not made for Tarkov people, because they're too hardcore. What about the Bungie team? Well, again, as Justin and I were talking about, seems like, it's not made for them because
they're not really included.
Yeah! Like, when you come to Destiny, right? Yeah, it's got a PvP base to it. Absolutely, that's what Crucible is. But at the end of the day, it's also a narrative single-player game, or a narrative team-based game, or whatever you want to call it.
It's a narrative PvE game.
It's a PvE game that you can play without having to actually fight another player if you don't want to. In fact, that's not the major focus. With something like Marathon, though, that's the entire focus. That's the whole dang point. So, sure, Bungie, you can come in and be like, oh yeah, we're great with narrative, so we can do a narrative, and while, again, the truth of that is neither here nor there, the point is, the people who play this, or people who play your games, generally come in for either single-player experiences or PvE-heavy experiences, and, while by the looks of it seems to be some PvE in Marathon, that's more of a secondary flavor, right? It's kind of pretty much again, something else we were talking about before the stream, is the idea of, one person I heard compared it to Gambit. This is basically just the end form of Gambit, or perhaps more accurately, I would probably say it, the reverse of Gambit. It's PvE with it's heavy PvP with a slight PvE focus, unlike Gambit, which is the reverse. Heavy PvE with a slight PvP focus. You know, they took Gambit, reversed it, and made Marathon.
Yep.
But the problem is, that's not why people who play Bungie games play Bungie games.
No.
You know? So if it ain't for them, and it ain't for Tarkov, who the hell is this for? You know, something you'll be told in business is, you know, build it and they will come kind of thing. And while that's a nice sentiment in and of itself, not always true. Yeah, sure, if it's the revolutionary thing that makes life easier or better, or in this case just more fun, yeah, sure, people will come if it's the revolutionary thing. That's how revolutionary things work. But this isn't a revolutionary thing. It's an extraction shooter. It's an extraction shooter that's just the next in line in what seems to be a long line of attempts to make Tarkov killers, I guess.
Pretty much.
And as far as the numbers say, none of them are working. So, you know, it kind of comes to the point of saying, okay, Bungie, they can't do it. Wow. What makes you think you can? We do narrative? Cool. But that's not why people play this game. We do single player. Cool. But that's not this game. So, you know, it's like, your points don't really line up with the game, you know? Again, this could all be wrong. Maybe it'll take off. Some people have been saying it's the next big thing since sliced bread.
Someone I went and watched went and said chances are it's going to run for a little bit, but it's also going to flop.
Yeah, I think that's a good way of summarizing it, right? It might run for a little bit, especially initially, but in the end, will it retain people? Will it eventually flop regardless, right? Another thing I like to kind of put on for Asmongold here, controversial as he is he actually compared this kind of vibe to a Kojima game, right? And I think there's some basis to be made there, right? Kojima himself loves to play with these high-in-the-sky concepts like death, resurrection, psychics, you know, a bunch of crazy stuff. I mean, have you seen a Kojima game?
Yeah.
Man, looks like it was on an acid trip. Like, have you seen the latest Death Stranding trailer? Where he comes up with this, I don't know, but I'm sure it involves copious amounts of drugs.
It involves a lot of drugs.
But jokes aside, you know, not everyone is as creative and interesting as he plays with these concepts, right? Bungie, when they play with these concepts, yeah, it could go somewhere, but will it actually, right? Like, you know, these are high-in-the-sky concepts, but you have to kind of do them justice to make them resonate, right? It's fun to play with high-in-the-sky concepts like godhood and computers becoming self-aware and, you know, the human condition, which I'm sure are all points that we're going to see talked about in the Marathon story, just, you know, just as a betting man. But will that actually, you know, like, will that resonate? Will that matter, right? One thing that actually got brought up is when you're in a more PvE environment, you're more prone to actually listening to the story. Because, here's a fun fact, playing with other people is really freaking distracting.
Yep.
So will there actually be enough attention, not to nail the potential future players, but will there be enough ability to retain, or even focus, or even listen to that part of the game? You know, it's great if you want to play with these narrative concepts, but if everyone's too busy shooting and stealing from each other, who cares?
Yep.
You know?
It doesn't really matter what you fill in with the world if everyone's too busy with each other.
Pretty much, right? And funny enough, I actually was listening to, can't remember who he was, a fellow who fell out of love with Destiny. Shout out to Cross, who did a video on reacting to him. I can't remember his name at the moment. Go over to his channel, and you'll see why I fell out of love with Destiny. That guy, he said something along these lines and related to something else, you know? And I believe it was him who was comparing it to something else. He was comparing Destiny to something else when it came to this line. And he basically said, like I said, playing with other people is really freaking distracting. So it's very, you know, you can fill the world in with whatever you want, but again, as Justin kind of said, if everyone's too busy shooting each other, who cares? You know?
Mm-hmm.
So, again, we'll see. This could run, this could walk, this could flop. My money's on the latter two than the first, but if I, like I said, my money is on running, walking, and then flopping in that order. But again, I could be wrong. I'm almost hopeful I could be proven wrong. And I'll end it off here because we are right on the 30-minute mark almost. I'll basically end it off by saying this. My overall opinion on Marathon was originally negative. I hated Marathon. No lie. Hand on the orb of the Great Traveler, I hated this. Why? Because I saw Bungie basically cannibalizing Destiny to make this, with no better reason than because we need money and trust us, bro. Which are, at least in my book, two of the flimsiest reasons you can give. So, I was bitter. I was bitter at first. At first. Still kind of am, not gonna lie. But the wiser part of me has come to reflect upon all this and say, you know what? If it does succeed, it's a good thing. Because there's the business side of it. The business side of me says that it's a better bet to diversify your portfolio. Bungie is well known for burning through money as fast as they make it. And not a surprise either. Look at how fucking expensive it is to keep Destiny running, I'm sure. So they need ways to diversify their portfolio, and at the end of the day, I gotta admit, as a businessman, there is some evidence to prove that shooters, or at least multiplayer shooters, are semi-stable forms of income if you can do them right. I mean, for the love of God, look at how Activision has been going on for the past God knows how long, just on COD. But, if you can do it right, sure. I would prefer you do it, ethically right, but, whatever. The point is that there is some business sense to diversifying your portfolio. It's not smart to put all your eggs in one basket. The problem I'm seeing here is basically you're taking all your eggs out of one basket, and instead of diversifying the risk, putting 4 here, 4 there, 2 here, 3 there, whatever, you're taking all the eggs out of one, and you're putting them all in another. And the problem with that is, you've gone from a flimsy but salvageable basket to, by all accounts, a basket that's doomed to fall apart. And I don't know. There's
not
some
set up for success in any level.
Yeah. There is a universe where Marathon is successful, and that's a good thing, because like I said, it puts more money on the table, which, regardless of what you think of Pete Parsons and his obsession with cars, at the end of the day does put money in Bungie's pocket, which hopefully does result in a better Bungie and a better Destiny, and possibly even a D3, but, let's, cross your butt and pray. But, again, I don't know if that's what's going to end up happening, and that's what concerns me. I want Marathon to succeed. A part of me genuinely does, because like I said, that results in a healthier Bungie, and at least theoretically, by extension, a healthier Destiny. But again, the optimist in me has to confront with the more business-minded realist in me that says, the numbers don't look good here. The more gambling side of my mind that sits here and goes, yeah, these numbers don't look good. So, I don't know. I don't hate I genuinely don't hate Marathon. If anything, I'll admit, I might even try it. Like I said, it's not off the table.
But it's not going to be a cup of tea that you go for.
Yeah, it ain't exactly my perfect drink, shall we say. It ain't the drink I'd reach for. So, what's your type, Justin?
I'm probably not going to touch it in general. I'm probably not going to go for it at all. I mean, extraction shooters have never been a forte that I've enjoyed, even in my small amount of time that I have gone and played some varying level of extraction-ish type shooting type game. I can't vibe with the kind of game where, at any moment, everything I lose or everything I have can be lost. If I want to go and do that, I'll just go with playing Minecraft and just have my diamond armor be lost. I'll do that instead. Just saying. So, yeah. No matter what, in my opinion, the gunplay, the PvP, the shooting, and how all of that environment is going to work out with both the players and the AI that you're dealing with, that's going to be good. No matter what, that's going to be good because that's been Bungie's strongest suit. But that alone isn't going to go and carry the game for me and make me want to try it.
And that's kind of the thing, right? It's kind of that overall impression that I think is definitely kind of permeating, right? Like I said, we're already hearing comparisons to Concord, and,
that's not a good one.
Betting man or no, I can't see a single universe where that's a good comparison. Yeah. At least not this one.
No.
Maybe if the universe where Concord was successful, but I don't think you noticed, but we're not living in that one. So, again, we'll wait and see. Anyways, that's what we have for this week's video. That's kind of our opinion of Marathon. Like I said, I might try it, but it's definitely not something I'm rushing out to pre-order. If anything, I might just wait to see how it plays out and maybe try it after it's released.
Yep.
Maybe I'll play the beta. Again, dice in the air. We'll see where they land. So, that's everything. Hopefully more uplifting news next week. Apparently they revealed possibly the... Well, no, they have revealed the... What is it? Fate of the Nine or something reveal?
Yeah.
That's going to be on May 6th?
Yeah, you said Fate of the Nine.
Right. And that'll be May 6th, so continuing the trend of Bungie of not telling us a damn thing until the absolute last minute. I swear to God, one of these days we're going to get a reveal stream from them where, like, what's the joke I've been hearing where people are saying, like, Frontiers is going to reveal, and it's going to be like, the reveal stream's going to come off, and they're like, surprise, Frontiers releases today! It's like...
No, I just imagine it like this. It's like, we're not working on a Destiny 3. We're not working on a Destiny 3. Surprise, we're working on a Destiny 3.
You know what? If you were a more smart businessman working at Bungie, you probably would be saying something like that, because that would be a good thing, right?
But they're not. They're obviously not.
They're not. They're not.
Obviously
No, they're not.
But it'd be.
But again,
it would be interesting, and it would be smart when you think about it.
I will say this as a final closing thought. Hand on my ghost, if they did announce a D3, I'm platinuming D2 today, and I'm going out to pre-order it the minute it comes on pre-order. I'm buying Collector's Edition. Yes, I will at least simp for D3. Like I said, I'm very stubborn that way. But that is not this universe. Not yet, anyway. Alright then. Have a good one. Have a good week. Let us know in the comment section what you thought. What do you think of Marathon? Give us the usuals. And we'll see you all next week. Bye-bye, everybody!
Have fun.